welcome. You're watching India at G20, a show where we get you all the G20 related developments of the day. India's G20 president has come out with a chair's summary and outcome document and not a joint statement. This is reminiscent of what happened at the conclusion of the G20 finance ministers meeting in Bengaluru. So why were a chair's summary and outcome document only issued and not a joint statement at the end of the G20 foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi? We'll tell you all about that. Also on the show, the takeaways from the second day of the G20 anti-corruption working group meeting and G20 related developments in Ranchi and Mizoram. I'm Manan Bhattacharya. First up, the top stories. Outcome document and chair's summary adopted at the G20 foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi states the adverse impact on the global economy by the Ukraine conflict. Countries reiterate their national positions as expressed at the UNSC and UNGA. Most members strongly condemn the war in Ukraine, but Russia and China disagree with the formulation. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says, though there was agreement on the bulk of the issues that concern the global south, a joint statement was not issued because of divergences on the Ukraine conflict. Outcome document and chair's summary reflect consensus on strengthening multilateralism, food and energy security, climate action, biodiversity, global health, development cooperation, new and emerging technologies, women's empowerment, humanitarian assistance, disaster risk reduction, global skill mapping, counter-terrorism and counter-narcotics, calls for stepping up of efforts to deny terrorist groups safe haven, freedom of operations, movement, recruitment, financial, material or political support. Dr. S. Jaishankar meets the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang on the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in New Delhi, reiterates that the current state of India-China relationship is abnormal. Both leaders discuss challenges in the bilateral relationship, especially peace and tranquility in border areas and the G20 agenda. Dr. S. Jaishankar meets U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting. Leaders review bilateral ties and discuss global issues. Discussions on the second day of the first G20 anti-corruption working group meeting at Gurugram city of Haryana focuses on strengthening law enforcement cooperation against corruption and related economic crimes, promoting integrity and effectiveness of public bodies responsible for preventing and fighting corruption, updating guides on international cooperation in civil and administrative proceedings, and on mutual legal assistance. Our top focus tonight, an outcome document and chair's summary was adopted at the G20 foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi. Now, why was that the case? Well, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said at a press briefing that though there was agreement on the bulk of the issues that concern the global south, a joint statement was not issued because of divergences on the Ukraine conflict. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from New Delhi.
The G20 foreign ministers meeting started in New Delhi with a video message by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. While alluding to the geopolitical tensions in wake of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Prime Minister urged the foreign ministers to not let intractable issues detract them from addressing the pressing challenges to growth, development, economic resilience, disaster resilience, financial stability, transnational crime, corruption, terrorism, and food and energy security.
As Foreign Minister, it is but natural that your discussions are affected by the geopolitical tensions of the day. We all have our positions and our perspectives on how this tension should be resolved. However, as the leading economies of the world, we also have a responsibility toward those who are not in this room. The world looks upon the G20 to ease the challenges of growth, development, economic resilience, disaster resilience, financial stability, transnational crime, corruption, terrorism, and food and energy security. In all these areas, the G20 has capacity to build consensus and deliver concrete results. We should not allow issues that we cannot resolve together to come in the way of those we can.
Flagging how multilateralism is in crisis, the Prime Minister urged for reform of multilateral institutions.
We must all acknowledge that multilateralism is in crisis today. The architecture of global governance created after the Second World War was to serve two functions. First, to prevent future wars by balancing competing interests. Second, to foster international cooperation on issues of common interests. The experience of the last few years, financial crisis, climate change, pandemic, terrorism, and wars clearly shows that global governance has failed in both its mandates. We must also admit that the tragic consequences of this failure are being faced most of all by the developing countries.
In the evening, a chair summary and outcome document was adopted. However, differences over the Russia-Ukraine conflict prevented a joint statement.
On the bulk of the issues which concern especially the global south, the developing countries, there was a considerable meeting of minds, and a considerable meeting of minds which has been captured by the outcome document. Now, the question, why was, did we fall short of expectations? Why is it called what it is? If we had had a perfect meeting of minds on all issues and captured it fully, then obviously it would have been a collective statement. But there were issues, and I think the issues, I would say very frankly, concerned the Ukraine conflict, on which there were divergences. So on the bulk of the issues, we were able to get an outcome document. There was a chair summary because there were differences on the Ukraine issue which we could not reconcile between various parties who held differing positions.
Sessions of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting focused on addressing contemporary challenges around multilateralism, food and energy security, development cooperation, countering new and emerging threats and counter-terrorism, and amplifying the concerns of the global south. Owing to divergences between the West and Russia over the Russia-Ukraine conflict, a joint statement could not be adopted at the Foreign Ministers meeting on Thursday. But considerable progress was made on other issues, especially those relating to the global south. Amritpal Singh for DD India in New Delhi.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang on the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. While briefing the media, Dr. Jaishankar said that his meeting with the Chinese Foreign Minister lasted for about 45 minutes, but the bulk of the conversation was on the challenges in the bilateral relationship, especially peace and tranquility in border areas and the G20 agenda.
China meeting. I met Minister Qin Gang on the sidelines of the conference this afternoon. It's our first meeting after he took over as Foreign Minister. So we spent, I don't know, maybe about 45 minutes talking to each other. The bulk of our conversation, understandably, was about the current state of our relationship, which many of you have heard me describe as abnormal, and I think those were among the adjectives that I used in that meeting. We have, there are real problems in that relationship that need to be looked at, that need to be discussed very openly and candidly between us. That's what we sought to do today. We also had a brief discussion on what was happening in the G20 framework, but the thrust of the meeting was really on our bilateral relationship and the challenges in the bilateral relationship, especially that of peace and tranquility in the border areas.
Dr. Jaishankar also held a bilateral meeting with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The External Affairs Minister said that it was an opportunity to review bilateral ties and discuss global issues. India and Italy have decided to upgrade their relationship into a strategic partnership. The decision was taken during delegation-level talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni in New Delhi. While addressing a joint press meeting, Italy's Prime Minister said that PM Modi knows that he can rely on Italy's support for G20 presidency.
Now that India has the presidency of the G20, because I think that India can very well represent, in terms of even of leadership, represent the requirements of the countries of the global south. And we definitely do want to give a helping hand along this process to India. Prime Minister Modi knows very well Italy's position, which is giving full support to the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and we both hope that India, having the presidency of the G20, may play a central role in facilitating a negotiating process for the cessation of hostilities for a just peace. Prime Minister Modi knows that he can rely on us, on our cooperation, full round support for the upcoming G20 Indian Summit, G20 Summit. They can rely on Italy, on our government to further enhance our relations. Prime Minister Modi has reached, I think, is the most loved one of all around the world. But I mean, this has really proven that he has been a major leader, and congratulations for that, Prime Minister.
The Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, participated in the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in New Delhi. Bangladesh is one of the 7 guest countries invited to take part in the deliberations by India. Ahead of the meeting, Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, Mr. Momen, delivered an address at the Vivekananda International Foundation in New Delhi on Wednesday. He urged the countries of the region to enhance cooperation by setting up regional power and energy grids, ensuring equitable market access, quick transfer and assimilation of technology, and employment of professionals in regional economies. He also said that countries of the South Asian region should tap the potential of mutual complementarities to realize the thriving possibilities of cooperation with each other. He also stressed upon the growing friendship between India and Bangladesh over the last few years, reiterating Bangladesh's policy of zero tolerance towards terrorism and violent extremism. He said that his country will never allow its soil to be used for such activities. Now, the second focus of the day, discussions on the second day of the first G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting at Gurugram city of Haryana focused on strengthening law enforcement cooperation against corruption and related economic crimes. The India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh reports from Gurugram.
The first anti-corruption working group meeting of the G20 is taking place in Gurugram in Haryana. As G20 president, India is reaffirming united action to ensure zero tolerance against corruption and deepen G20 commitments towards countering corruption globally. On day 2, the deliberations focused on strengthening law enforcement cooperation for action against corruption and related economic crimes, mutual legal assistance, updating guides on international cooperation in civil and administrative proceedings relating to corruption, and promoting integrity and effectiveness of public bodies responsible for preventing and combating corruption. Over 90 delegates from G20 member countries, invitee countries and international organizations participated in the deliberations.
This is very critical, more in particular when you look at the subject. We are dealing with the issue of prioritizing asset recovery. When it comes to asset recovery, most of the countries are not doing well. We are not recovering what we should be recovering. We are currently recovering only a fraction. So it will be good that all of us prioritize asset recovery.
How to strengthen cooperation, how to strengthen law enforcement cooperation, how to share information, and how to make international standard for combating corruption. And India, this presidency is have an initiative to propose 7 issues that support cooperation network between each country to combat corruption.
It's really important to convene in work like that, the work we are doing today, because fight against corruption, working on prevention of corruption is a crucial element to the development of the country, to the open market, to build a society that is better, and we have to work to engage ourselves in these important works.
Today's session has been interesting because we started looking at the different documents, the different high-level principles, which is going to assist countries to look at those issues from their practical perspective.
Corruption undermines the effort of states to develop, to raise and to retain and utilize resources for the benefit of the people.
Earlier on day 1, visiting delegates were treated to a gala display of Indian hospitality and the beautiful folk dance and heritage of Haryana. In the ongoing G20 engagement, visiting delegates have recognized that corruption is a complex social, political and economic challenge affecting all countries in a globalized world.
As the G20 deliberations continue, India's presidency is aiming to strengthen international cooperation for action against economic crimes. With Team DD India, Shubhendu Ghosh in Gurugram.
DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh gets us insights into India's success story of using direct benefit transfer to curb corruption in the next report.
We are at the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meet in Gurugram, where international delegations have come together to find ways to fight corruption and promote transparency in public dealings. India is also putting forth its best practices, success stories such as a direct benefit transfer. There's a special stall put up here. We have with us Anshuman Kamila, who works closely with the DBT mission. Anshuman, how is India's success story of DBT presented at the G20, if you could tell us about it?
28 lakh crore rupees have been transferred from the government, various governments, to the last mile beneficiary through DBT, and in the process we have saved 2.2 lakh crore at every stage of the program stage, like application processing, making the application, processing the application and delivery of benefits. We have been able to digitize it, and therefore there's a lot of corruption that has been curbed and transparency is being promoted.
Right. And Anshuman, we see that a lot of foreign delegates were interested in knowing more about the manner in which India, with its massive population, has been able to successfully implement it. What were the responses, their questions about India's story?
Yeah, so I think one of the major things that India wants to portray in the G20 and in the anti-corruption working group also is the digital public infrastructure. We have just seen the 3 instances of digital public infrastructure that has helped in successfully implementing DBT, and that is what has attracted the most interest among the delegates, because they want to know how these 3 emergent technologies, developing technologies, are working seamlessly to benefit the last mile beneficiary and at the same time helping the governments to curb corruption and promote transparency.
So that was learning about the manner in which India's success story of direct benefit transfer is being presented at the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meet. Similar success stories from across the world, the best practices. This is the platform where they're all coming together to find ways in which international communities can cooperate together and find a common platform to take it forward. With camera person Shailendra Chauhan, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Gurugram.
A two-day G20 conference got underway on the theme Materials for Sustainable Energy in Ranchi today under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Eminent scientists and researchers from G20 nations discussed science, technology, innovation, renewable energy, clean and green energy and challenges of the 21st century at the Research and Innovation Initiative Gathering Conference. Dr. Srivari Chandrasekhar, who is the secretary in the department which is related to this particular conference, said that Jharkhand is a state full of mineral wealth and discussions with representatives of G20 countries will increase the scope of research as well as increase global market prospects. He stressed on the role of working together with researchers and scientists from G20 countries to reduce global warming, commitment of net zero carbon emissions by year 2070, food and health security.
Today's meeting is dedicated to the discussions on the topic Materials for Sustainable Energy, which is one of the priority area identified under RIAG. The advancements in materials that can be used in new and renewable energy science and technology has become an essential need for our developmental enterprise. Today's conference on the Materials for Sustainable Energy shall focus on understanding the fundamentals of material development and bottlenecks to achieve efficient large-scale green energy generation and storage. I do believe that this conference will give us new direction on how we proceed further. I'm hopeful that all the G20 countries come on single platform to make this transition happen with smoothness.
The G20 meeting is working on 6 different areas and putting all together, and the members are here to deliberate on how to have a sustainable future.
This country is working on a minimum of 6 different areas like energy generation, energy conversion, energy storage, energy audit and energy management. So putting together all the 6 factors into one basket, we are all here to think very strongly, to have deep dive discussions on how best we can develop materials of this generation and materials of the next generation so that we all, the globe, can have a sustainable future and a sustainable energy.
Mizoram hosted a Business 20 conference on India's initiatives in the Northeast, conference on opportunities for multilateral business partnerships in urban planning, infrastructure, bamboo, startup, skill development, nursing and paramedics at the Mizoram University Auditorium in Aizawl. In this B20 conference, Aizawl city witnessed the convergence of a host of overseas delegates from 17 nations. The inaugural session commenced with welcome remarks from Pradeep Bagla, the co-chairman of CII Northeast Council.
Group of 20, G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. It plays an important role in shaping and strengthening global architecture and governance on all major international economic issues. India holds the presidency of the G20 from 1st December 2022 to 30th November 2023. The Business 20 is a group that represents the private sector within the G20 forum.
Let's hear in now to some G20 delegates who participated in the Mizoram conference.
Which is the main point to go to when it comes to investments and businesses, to have a closer look on Mizoram. Into the plenary now to learn about the different sectors, so I don't have one yet to pick. What is important to us is that it needs to be a sustainable kind of sector.
As represented by the ambassador here, is to make up linkages with different sectors in India, with the different states in India, where we think we can cooperate So that's the purpose of the embassy, to facilitate that cooperation between India and Zimbabwe and between different states of India and the Republic of Zimbabwe.
Business 20, remember, is an engagement group of the G20 that discusses various business-related issues under the G20 framework. With that, we take your leave. Thank you so much for voting India at G20. We'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.
The world looks upon the G20 to ease the challenges of growth, development, economic resilience, disaster resilience, financial stability, transnational crime, corruption, terrorism, and food and energy security. In all these areas, the G20 has capacity to build consensus and deliver concrete results. We should not allow issues that we cannot resolve together to come in the way of those we can. As you meet in the land of Gandhi and the Buddha, I pray that you will draw inspiration from India's civilizational ethos to focus not on what divides us, but on what unites us.
Watch India at G20 at 7:30 p.m. IST today on DD India.
हाय मॉम, फिर से शॉपिंग? बाबूजी, आपने इसे बिगाड़ के रखा।
लिमिट में करो तो कुछ बुरा नहीं होता है।
बिना लिमिट शॉपिंग करेगी आपके कार्ड पे। ऐड ऑन जो है।
मैंने तो कार्ड पे लिमिट सेट कर दिया। अच्छा, इसके फायदे ये हैं कि रिस्क कम हो जाता है और अगर फ्रॉड भी हुआ तो तुरंत बैंक को बोल दीजिए, नुकसान कम।
दादू!
नेक्स्ट
टाइम ये पिंक ड्रेस। You're the limit.
लिमिट तो सेट है। आरबीआई कहता है जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
Volleyball in India has a rich history. They won the medal twice in the Asian Games. Volleyball league, things have started to look up again.
We had a closer look at the sport of volleyball. We knew we had an instant liking. It's almost like your first crush, your first love.
On behalf of all the players, I can proudly say that Tribe Volleyball has been doing it. So we have got coaches like David Lee, Ruben and other foreign coaches. So their experience counts a lot.
For me, 4 to 8 years, India should be a top team.
We have pistol shooter Anish Bhanwala with us. Your first Senior World Cup medal. Tell us, how big is this for you?
It is very special for me and I'm really happy to win this medal.
What has been your biggest achievement in your career so far?
I'd say if we see the competition, then this World Cup.
How do you handle criticism?
I don't get much involved on social media. I rarely see it. Paris Olympics is not very far from now and I'm on a good track, I'll say. Let's see how it goes.
What champions speak with me on D-Day India?
Unity and diversity, does it translate down to the poorest of poor? Is there a certain segment and section of society that feels that it's very marginalized and never a part of the majority opinion?
Every time we focus more on the diversity aspect, and not to the diversity aspect, but a distorted aspect of diversity extending to the extent of divisivity. So, when our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi came, he has undertaken an uphill task.